Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through all that noise in the global news cycle.
Right, and deliver the concentrated knowledge you actually need.
We're talking scandals, complex conflicts, even existential threats, all synthesized and explained.
Mhm.
So today, you're joining us for, well, it's like a sprint across continents. We're jumping from the shadow of the Epstein network to these really intense corporate regulatory battles.
And then straight into political upheaval and, frankly, a pretty dire climate summit.
It really is a global stack of sources we've pulled together for you today. And our mission, as always, is synthesis. It's not just summarizing.
Yeah, linking things together.
Exactly. We're connecting high-level info,
Yeah.
newly released court files, corporate letters, deep corruption probes, and some alarming science from COP30.
All to give you the essential context.
We want to show you how these crises, which might seem separate, are often connected, usually by themes of power, influence, and, well, lack of accountability. And the scope today is just incredible. We have new emails giving more detail on the powerful figures around Jeffrey Epstein.
Right, and then accusations of utter hypocrisy against a huge tobacco firm operating in Africa.
Plus major anti-corruption raids hitting the energy sector in wartime Ukraine.
And finally, the, frankly, crushing reality of new carbon emission records. Records that make that 1.5-degree warming target look, well,
Functionally impossible.
pretty much. So let's unpack all of this.
Okay, the Epstein documents. The fallout continues, and it really demands our attention first. This latest release gives us more deeply uncomfortable context about the people connected to him. Specifically, looking at Prince Andrew, we now have an email from July 2011, and in it, Epstein seems to confirm directly to a journalist that Virginia Giuffre was on his plane.
Right.
And did have that photo taken with Andrew.
And that's significant because, it really throws direct shade on what Prince Andrew suggested later in that infamous 2019 Newsnight interview.
Where he hinted the photo might be fake or doctored.
Exactly. But this contemporary email from 2011, it tells a different story. The level of detail there, it's just hard to ignore.
We see that kind of detail even earlier, actually. 4 months earlier, March 2011, there was this right of reply email.
Yes, that one.
Detailing really graphic allegations. A redacted woman introduced to Andrew by Epstein back in 2001, alleged sexual contact at Ghislaine Maxwell's place in London, being told to sit on Andrew's knee in New York, groping, and an alleged orgy at Little St. James.
And crucially, we know that email was forwarded directly to an address just marked The Duke.
The Duke. Yes, and the communication right after the Jeffrey story first broke, that's maybe the most telling part about the relationship.
What happened then?
March 6, 2011, the very day the story hits the press, Epstein emails the Duke, just asks, "You okay?"
Wow.
And tells him these stories are complete and utter fantasy.
Just like that, complete denial.
It suggests a certain level of arrogance, maybe perceived impunity.
You have to wonder.
And it's kind of underscored by another email that July. Epstein tells his publicist to investigate Giuffre.
How so?
He promises she's a fraud and claims if they can prove it, they'll be able to, and this is a quote, "go to ascots for the rest of our lives."
Good grief. That language. It suggests total confidence they could just crush any accuser, manipulate the system.
The implication of protection, of power, it's just impossible to miss.
Yeah. And of course, the release of these documents in Washington immediately got tangled up in politics.
How did that play out?
Well, House Democrats started things off. They published just 3 specific email exchanges, including one with the author Michael Wolff.
Only 3 emails, though. I mean, doesn't that kind of neutralize it as a political weapon? It feels more like information overload then. Gives the other side an easy counter.
You're absolutely right. That selective release meant its political use was immediately, well, blunted. Republicans fired back by dumping a huge tranche, over 20,000 pages.
Whoa.
And they explicitly said it was to counter what they call a Democratic attempt to cherry-pick documents.
What was the phrase?
Create a fake narrative to slander President Trump. Even the White House press secretary jumped in.
What did they say?
Said the emails were selectively leaked and repeated the line that Trump had kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club decades ago for being a creep.
So it just shows how fast information that really should be about accountability gets twisted into a political football.
Precisely. And that fight to avoid accountability, it isn't just political. It's also central to how some powerful corporations operate around the world.
Okay, so let's connect that theme. Powerful entities fighting regulation. We can pivot now from political scandal to a case of corporate behavior, British American Tobacco, or BAT.
Yes, and they're being accused of utter hypocrisy.
The contrast in regulations is pretty stark here. BAT is headquartered in the UK, right?
That's right.
Where standards are quite high. Flavored cigarettes, banned since 2020. And health warnings have to cover 65% of the pack.
Yet you look at their lobbying in Zambia. They were fighting against a draft tobacco control bill there, and their demands. Well, they tell it a totally different story.
What were they asking for?
BAT's subsidiary wrote to Zambian government ministers asking them to basically abandon or at least delay bans on advertising and sponsorship.
And what about the packaging, things they already comply with back home?
Exactly. The draft bill in Zambia wanted graphic health warnings covering 75% of the packaging, a really high standard, proven to save lives.
And BAT wanted...
They asked for it to be slashed, down to maybe 30% or 50% max, even though the WHO, the World Health Organization, recommends at least 50%.
Wow. And they didn't stop there.
No. They also pushed to remove broad restrictions on flavored products, the very things banned in the UK, and they wanted to water down the penalties.
What kind of penalties were proposed?
The draft bill suggested pretty serious stuff, like up to 10 years in prison, or fines based on a percentage of annual turnover for breaking the rules.
So it's an aggressive pushback against public health measures. In a country where, 7,000 people die every year from tobacco-related illness?
That's the figure, and you saw that quote from Master Chimbala, the Zambian anti-tobacco campaigner. He called it utter hypocrisy and total emotional, moral, and spiritual bankruptcy. Hard-hitting words.
Absolutely. So what's BT's counter-argument? They must have one.
They do, though you might find it sounds like, well, a deflection. They say they support health objectives, but they claim these kinds of strict regulations and harsh penalties often have unwelcome and unexpected consequences.
Like what?
They point to the realities of the Zambian market, specifically rising illicit trade, smuggled cigarettes, basically.
Is there actually any real merit to that illicit trade argument, or is that just the standard line the industry uses everywhere to fight regulations?
It is the standard defense, pretty much globally. And its purpose is really to create hesitancy among regulators, make them pause. But when you see a corporation headquartered in the global north fighting tooth and nail in the global south against rules that are already mandatory for people back home.
Yeah, the message seems pretty clear.
It does. Public health seems to take a back seat to the profit margin. It really highlights how powerful companies can push for the lowest common denominator in regulation, especially in markets where health systems might be more vulnerable.
And that fight for the lowest common denominator, it isn't just commercial, is it? It feels central to the political crises we're seeing erupt elsewhere, too.
Absolutely.
So let's move to those now. 3 big political flashpoints: corruption, chaos, and conflict. Starting in Ukraine.
Yes, a massive corruption probe, codenamed Midas, has really shaken the government there.
This feels like a major test for Ukraine's commitment to internal reform, especially during wartime.
It absolutely is. We saw 2 ministers resign Justice and Energy after this investigation by NABU. That's the National Anti-Corruption Bureau.
The very agency set up to show Western allies that Ukraine is serious about cleaning things up.
Precisely. And the probe is focused on a huge money laundering scheme. It's in the energy and defense sectors, involving the state-owned nuclear power company, Energoatom.
How did the scheme allegedly work?
Apparently, it was pretty brazen. Members of this criminal group allegedly demanded bribes from contractors, somewhere between 10 and 15%.
And why does this matter so much right now?
Well, 2 main reasons. First, it obviously undermines morale during wartime. But maybe more critically, it feeds skepticism among those Western allies.
The ones providing billions in aid.
Exactly. They need confidence that their money isn't just fueling corruption.
And wasn't there a really strange detail about who was controlling it all?
Yes, this is almost unbelievable. The whole system was reportedly run by an outsider, someone investigators only refer to by the codename Carlson.
Carlson, from the Swedish children's book. That sounds almost too bizarre for a major corruption scandal.
It does seem oddly specific. And, speculation is swirling. People are trying to link Carlson to Timur Mindich, who's known to be a confidant of President Zelensky.
But that's just speculation at this point.
Unproven, yes. But what is proven, what's hard evidence, is the scale of the money involved. Investigators seized over $4 million in cash.
Wow.
And it was in marked bundles, still in the standard packaging from the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank.
Just piles of cash straight from the Fed.
Right there. It speaks volumes about the scale and the international connections of this scheme.
Okay, let's shift focus now to Bangladesh. Boiling political instability there.
Yes. The ousted Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, she's now in exile in India, and she's facing trial back home for crimes against humanity.
Related to the uprising that actually ended her rule.
Correct. And in response, her party called for a nationwide lockdown protest.
What did that entail?
It led to severe disruption across the country. Classes halted, transport stopped. And there were reports of significant violence, crude bombs, vehicles torched, lots of clashes.
The political dynamics sound incredibly tense. Hasina's return must be unthinkable for the current interim government.
It is. That government is led by the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. And those charges against Hasina, crimes against humanity, they carry immense weight.
Is the interim government worried about her influence from exile?
Very much so. They've actually expressed formal concern to India, asking them essentially not to let Hasina give interviews from outside Bangladesh. They see her rallying her political base from abroad.
It just shows how fragile the situation is there.
It really does. The challenge for Yunus's government isn't just stopping the protests. It's managing this immense political pressure from a powerful exiled former leader while trying to keep stability in a very tense, very densely populated region.
Okay, one more flashpoint. The West Bank. Violence has surged there.
Yes, significantly. To the point where we're seeing high-level condemnation from within Israel itself. President Isaac Herzog, top military officials. They've called recent attacks by Jewish settlers against Palestinians shocking and serious.
Are there numbers to back that up?
There are, and they're alarming. The UN reported over 260 settler attacks just in October. That's the highest monthly total they've recorded since way back in 2006.
And the military leadership isn't just condemning it for political reasons.
No, they're pointing out the significant operational cost. This is the key actionable insight, I think. Meaning the military is having to divert critical resources. Troops and equipment needed for other security operations, other defense efforts.
They're being pulled away to deal with this settler violence.
Exactly, to manage what the military itself is calling this anarchist fringe of settlers.
Were there specific incidents mentioned?
Yes, some really shocking ones. Settlers attacking villages like Beit Lid and Du Sharaf, setting fire to property, even clashing directly with Israeli soldiers who tried to intervene.
So this internal strife, this forced diversion of military resources, it just adds another layer of complexity to an already incredibly volatile security situation. So we've tracked corruption, hindering stability, political chaos erupting, this pattern of resource diversion, of self-interest. It leads us now, I suppose, to the ultimate resource problem, the global existential threat that's hanging over COP30.
Yeah, and the news from the climate science community there is, well, it's overwhelmingly grim. The global carbon budget findings just came out. Fossil fuel emissions are set to hit another record high in 2025. They're projected to increase 1.1% over the previous year. That's 38.1 billion tons of CO2.
And this isn't because renewables aren't growing, right?
No, that's the frustrating part. Renewables are growing. The issue is their growth just isn't enough to offset the massive overall growth in global energy demand.
We're simply using more of everything.
We are. And if you look at the math for keeping warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, the target, well, the situation is dire. One of the scientists, Pierre Friedlingstein, you put it bluntly, the remaining carbon budget for 1.5C is about 170 billion tons. At the current rate we're emitting, he said that equates to 4 years of emissions before the budget is exhausted.
4 years.
So he concluded that is impossible, essentially. We've basically run out of time on that specific target.
And this impossible math is being discussed while a major player, the U.S., isn't even at the table at COP30.
That's right. Having withdrawn from the Paris Agreement again under President Trump, who, let's not forget, famously called climate change the greatest con job.
So what are the big political battles actually happening at the summit?
Well, they reflect just how hard it is to get accountability. First, there's disinformation. It's now formally recognized as a major obstacle.
How so?
12 countries actually signed a declaration on information integrity on climate change. This was in response to a reported 267% increase in COP-related disinformation circulating online just between July and September.
That's a huge jump.
It is. And then there's another massive blind spot when it comes to accountability. Military emissions.
Right. How big a deal is that?
It's huge. The global military, combined, accounts for at least 5.5% of total greenhouse gases.
5.5%.
Yeah, that makes the world's militaries collectively the fourth largest carbon polluter on the planet, bigger than Russia's entire national emissions.
Wow, and countries don't have to report this.
Nope. States are not obliged to report military emissions to the UNFCCC, the main climate body. It's a massive strategic gap in the accounting.
A critical emission that needs fixing.
Definitely. On a more positive note, though, innovation is offering some pathways. You have Al Gore's Climate Trace Tool.
What does that do?
It uses AI and satellite imagery to pinpoint large polluters in near real time. For example, they showed that just converting steel plants to the best available low-carbon tech could save 20.5 billion tons of CO2 by 2050.
So the technology or a blueprint is there.
It demonstrates a clear technical path forward if the political will could be found.
Which brings us to probably the biggest battle at COP30, political justice, fairness, the just transition.
Exactly. The G77 and China bloc, that's a large group of developing nations, they're pushing really hard for something called the BLM Action Mechanism, or BAM.
What would BAM do?
It's trying to formalize this idea of a just transition. It addresses concerns raised even by the UN Secretary-General, Guterres.
Concerns that the shift to clean energy could just repeat old patterns.
Precisely. That the rush for critical minerals needed for batteries and renewables risks repeating historical exploitation, particularly in the global south, where many of these minerals are found.
So BAM would aim to prevent that.
It would try, by formalizing cooperation, technology transfer, and crucially, funding that doesn't create more debt for these countries. But here's the key takeaway.
Yes.
Well, the global south is demanding this formal mechanism for fairness. The global north is currently blocking it.
So another fight against accountability, in a way.
You could see it that way.
Okay, we have covered a lot today. Scandals rooted in old money and power.
Corporate exploitation moving into vulnerable new markets.
Political chaos erupting from Ukraine to Bangladesh to the West Bank.
And the failure so far of global bodies to really grip these existential climate threats.
What's the connecting thread you see through all of this?
For me, it really comes down to the battle for influence and the constant fight against transparency.
How so?
Well, think about it. Whether it's code names like Carlson being used to hide alleged corruption leaders in Ukraine,
Or the massive, undisclosed carbon footprint of the global military.
or corporate lobbyists trying to weaken health regulations in Zambia that are standard practice elsewhere.
It always comes back to information.
Right. The flow of accurate, complete information or the deliberate spread of disinformation that seems to be the key battleground everywhere.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, to consider today. We've documented powerful entities fighting tooth and nail against regulations that protect people elsewhere. Think BAT in Zambia.
And we've seen powerful nations blocking formal mechanisms designed simply to ensure fairness, like the BLM Action Mechanism at COP30.
So the question is, what does it really say about our global priorities when the effort to sustain profits or evade accountability or just maintain political control consistently seems to outweigh the urgent, desperate need to protect public health and the future stability of our planet?